welcome. I'm Shivani Singh. While the US military is busy dropping ordnance in the Caribbean, the real applause isn't coming from Washington. It's coming from Beijing. On January 6, 2026, Chinese state media and top strategists did something unexpected. They essentially thanked President Trump for his latest military strike in Venezuela. Is it a trap, a taunt, or a total tactical blunder? We are breaking down why China thinks that Trump just handed them the keys to the Indo-Pacific. They say in politics, your enemy's mistake is your greatest opportunity. But in the world of high-stakes geopolitics, President Trump's latest maximum pressure move in Venezuela is being described by China as more than an opportunity. They are calling it a strategic gift. While the Pentagon is celebrating a surgical strike against Maduro's infrastructure, the mood in Beijing is surprisingly festive. To the average observer, a US military win in its own backyard should worry China. But the masterminds in the Great Hall of the People are looking at the 2026 map and seeing something very different. We are explaining why every bomb dropped in Caracas is music to Xi Jinping's ears. In Chinese eyes, US President Donald Trump's decision to capture Maduro, an all-weather strategic partner of Beijing, has produced what many see as a strategic paradox. An action intended to demonstrate US resolve that instead strengthens China's diplomatic messaging and offers Beijing fresh rhetorical leverage in disputes ranging from Taiwan to the South China Sea. First, let's talk about the distraction factor. For the last 5 years, the US has been trying to pivot to Asia. The goal? Contain China. But you can't pivot to Asia if you are pinned down in the Americas. By launching a military strike in Venezuela, Trump has forced the Pentagon to move carrier strike groups and surveillance assets away from the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait to the Caribbean. For Beijing, this is a dream come true. Every hour the US spends worrying about Maduro is an hour that they aren't worrying about China's island building or its influence over the Philippines. Now, in the world of global chess, Trump just moved his most powerful pieces to the corner of the board that China doesn't even care about. Beijing is effectively saying, please, stay in the Caribbean as long as you like. The Pacific is looking very lonely right now. Then there is the diplomatic optics. China has spent years selling a specific narrative to the global South, that the US is an imperialist bully that invades countries whenever it doesn't like their leaders. By striking Venezuela, Trump has given Beijing the perfect I told you so moment. While US missiles were hitting targets, Chinese diplomats were busy signing trade deals and building bridges. They are positioning themselves as a rational partner, the one who talks business, while the other guy talks bombs. This strike has made it incredibly easy for China to convince nations in Africa, Southeast Asia, and even South America that their non-interference policy is better than the American regime change model. Trump got the tactical win, but China is winning the popularity contest. Also, Beijing said that the US move violated international law and endangered peace and security in Latin America. It demanded the immediate release of Maduro and his wife, who are being detained in New York and are facing trial. The timing of the operation added to Beijing's frustration. Just hours before his capture, Maduro had met in Caracas with a high-level Chinese delegation, including China's special representative for Latin America and the Caribbean affairs. Analysts broadly agree that Trump's move does not alter China's immediate military calculus vis-a-vis Taiwan, but it does complicate the diplomatic terrain in which those disputes are contested. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, a claim that has been rejected by the island's government. Beijing also asserts sovereignty over nearly all of the South China Sea, placing it at odds with multiple Southeast Asian states that contest parts of the strategically vital waterway. In recent years, Washington has repeatedly criticized Chinese actions in these areas as violations of international law. According to analysts, Trump's seizure of Maduro's so weakens Washington's ability to sustain that criticism without facing accusations of hypocrisy. Finally, let's talk about oil and resilience. China is the world's biggest buyer of oil, and they have spent a decade securing energy lines that the US can't touch. By destabilizing Venezuela further, the US is ironically making whoever comes next in Venezuela even more dependent on Chinese loans and Russian support. Beijing knows that the US doesn't have the appetite for a long-term occupation, so they are waiting. They believe that once the dust settles and the US realizes it's stuck in a quagmire, China will be the only one left with the cash to rebuild the infrastructure. They aren't worried about the strike today. They are looking at who will be owning the oil pumps in 2030. The episode also raises questions about China's credibility among Latin American countries that have signed on to Xi Jinping's Global Security Initiative. Trump has not only threatened further military action against Venezuela, but has also warned of possible interventions against Colombia and Mexico, while suggesting that Cuba's communist government is weakening. Now, these developments may prompt regional governments to reassess how much protection Beijing's security pledges can offer in practice. China has invested heavily in Latin America over the past 2 decades, persuading several countries, including Costa Rica, Panama, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras, to switch diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to Beijing. So is the Venezuela strike a masterclass in America First strength, or is it exactly what China wanted? History shows us that the US is great at starting interventions but struggles to end them. If Beijing is right, Trump hasn't just hit a target in South America, he's opened a door for China in the East. As one Chinese analyst has put it, America is obsessed with the backyard while we are busy taking over the front yard. Thank you for watching.
For more such videos, subscribe to the Newsx YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.